Hello and welcome. We're in conversation today with MUKUND VASUDEVAN of Pentair, an S&P 500 company and an $8 billion global giant. MUKUND, thanks so much for joining us on the show today. It's great to get a chance to find out all that Pentair has been up to here in India. So to start off with, give us a sense of, what the progress has been over the last few years. When did Pentair first establish itself or set up base here in India? And, what was the main purpose or main business that you were targeting here?
Sure. Pentair is an $8 billion US-based company. We are an industrial giant. We are in various segments like water and fluid solutions, equipment protection, valves and controls. Those are three main segments. As far as India is concerned, we actually set up in 1998. We set up our factory in Goa, which was mainly for desalination equipment, so desalination plants, equipment to export to the rest of the world. That was in 1998. Shortly after that, around 2002, 2003 beginning, we set up our global design center. That was a captive design center to serve the design needs of all our plants across the world, all our businesses across the world. 2005, we started looking more actively at the Indian market, and we actually started with domestic water purification at that time. 2008, we started getting a little more in water, but a little more into industrial, looking at industrial and commercial water. Also, we set up our Bangalore equipment protection plant in 2008. And of course, the major event was last year when we merged with Tyco. And that's been a major change for us.
And how have things changed for you post that? Because globally, of course, it was a very big deal. Here in India as well, how has it impacted you?
It's a major portfolio shift for us. This has transformed Pentair in two ways. One is just in terms of portfolio of products and markets we serve, and the second is in terms of geographies. In portfolio of products we serve, we now are, in the past, we used to go after or do projects for, let's say, a building or a hotel, like a Taj, where we would supply pool equipment, pumps, filtration. We do similarly for an NTPC power plant. Pentair would supply water treatment, so some of the utility equipment for a power plant. Now with Tyco, we are much more integral to several of these industrial processes. So what I mean is not just utilities and water, it's actually integral to the process. So whether it's valves, whether it is heat tracing equipment, these are things which are integral to a refinery or a power plant. So that's the portfolio or product shift. In terms of markets, again, we're now much more heavily into oil and gas, petrochemical, mining, power than we were in the past. The geographic shift is actually much more relevant to us. With the merger with Tyco, almost 1/4 of our business is in what we call fast growth markets, which is India, China, Brazil, Middle East. And so both from a geographic perspective as well as a portfolio of solutions, and it's now a major transformation for us.
Do you still see us as a fast growth market given the current conditions that we're operating in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a short-term blip. There's a short-term dip in demand, especially in industrial markets. But with the growth in the population, with the need for infrastructure, it is bound to rebound. It will rebound. Probably in the next year and a half, 2 years, we'll see a rebound. And our goal is to be prepared. Or Pentair's goal is to be prepared for that rebound, because we've seen this happen before in 2008. And if you're not ready for it, you'll miss the boat again.
Okay. So you do see, of course, a lot of scope in India, and we'll get to that across the various markets as well. But, you've worked around the world, MUKUND, and that must have given you a lot of context, a lot of perspective in terms of how to deal with a market like India. Just share with us, some of the insights and some of the things you've implemented.
Yeah, sure. India is unique in many ways. So implementation is a little more different. But globally, in spite of the recent recession in North America and Europe, we have done fairly well in select markets like oil and gas, food and beverage. We continue to win projects in whether it's the desalination plants in Jebel Ali in the Middle East, or it's with Saudi Aramco for some of their refineries supplying valves, whether it's wastewater treatment in the Berlin airport. All these are projects which we are winning globally. I think the key is how do we bring that expertise and those solutions? How does Pentair bring the best in technology to India? And the challenge is twofold there. The challenge is, one, how do you educate the Indian customer about some of this technology? And second, how do you ensure good market coverage in a place like India? And we're working on both those areas to actually penetrate the Indian market more.
What about some of the challenges also of doing business here? Because the regulations are tedious in most sectors, and particularly in terms of getting projects just off track and on the way. A lot of industrial assets are finding a lot of pain in that process.
Bottlenecks, right?
Yes.
First of all, I would say, yeah, the government is getting a lot better on this. It's making changes. It's getting more efficient, and this is for any fast growth or developing country. This is a teething problem, and I've seen this happen in Brazil, where I've worked before. I've seen this happen in some of the African countries are going through it now, and India is just setting up the systems to make things more transparent, more speedy. So I would say I'm very bullish and optimistic that in the long term, this is the right market to be in. The challenges are there, but you have to work around them. I think there are pockets which do extremely well, and whether it's in oil and gas, refineries, for example, food and beverage, consumer goods, all those are areas, pockets where we continue to work and penetrate in those markets. The other area I should mention is services, operations, maintenance, replacement of spare parts. That's a business which is fairly steady, even though there might be an industrial new build slowdown. The existing plants still require work.
Okay. So these are some of the sectors that you also see as growth drivers here in India going forward.
Absolutely, yes.
Right. And give us some examples of some of the clients that you work with here as well, and the kind of work that you've done for them.
Yeah, it's a very broad question,
yes,
but
I know.
it's a very broad question because we do so much. I think what Pentair does is in India is it spans some of our biggest growth sectors. Our biggest sectors today are oil and gas, petrochemicals. Power is down right now, but it's still a fairly big sector. And then residential or domestic water purification. Those are some of the big areas we're in. So just to give you examples of projects we have done there in oil and gas or in petrochemicals, we work extensively with Reliance Industries. We've worked with them on their Jamnagar 1, 2, and we're trying to work with them in 3 as it's going through the build phase right now. Kane Energy, another example from oil and gas. Kane Energy, we actually supplied heat tracing equipment to their pipeline from Rajasthan all the way to Gujarat, to the refinery in Gujarat, and that's heavy oil. And to make that oil flow, you need to heat the pipe, and we supply heat tracing equipment for them. Another example would be in some of the major hotel chains, whether it's give an example, Chola Sheraton in Chennai, which was recently inaugurated. We have supplied pool equipment, sewage pumps, a variety of equipment. Also Chennai desalination plant, which was set up recently. There again, we've supplied valves, membranes, a variety of equipment, pumps, so to help, in fact, almost 10 to 12% of the Chennai desalination plant is equipment from Pentair.
Okay, and you're finding corporates are willing to go out there and spend and see of course, the benefits of using the latest in technology.
Yeah, I would say it's not universal, but it's I see it as twofold. One, it's our job to communicate that and work with the customer to help them understand how the value proposition is relevant to them. And if we can't communicate it, we have to manufacture it at a price which is competitive for the Indian market. So we work on both aspects.
On the domestic front, as you were saying as well, in terms of everyday use or for a consumer, I mean, how does Pentair then touch their lives?
Yeah, actually, Pentair is very passionate about domestic water purification globally. In fact, we are one of the largest suppliers of water treatment equipment in the domestic space. In India, we are the largest supplier of membranes, which is the heart of home water purifiers. Almost every third water purifier which goes into the market is a Pentair product. Similarly, if you take a Starbucks or a McDonald's, a large amount, all Starbucks and many of the McDonald's plants or outlets have Pentair water purification at their inlet. Another example is the Pepsi fountain machines. Okay. All the Pepsi fountain machines require a pump. It's a very sophisticated pump which mixes water, gas, the sugar and the syrup, and then delivers it. So every Pepsi fountain machine has Pentair pumps. That's another area. So as you can see, many areas where Pentair touches our life, or a layman's life.
So India must be a fairly complex market then, with, of course, all these various sectors, but also within the consumer or domestic space, given the kind of challenges we have in access to water, in purifying water for its various end uses. There must be some specific challenges that you face here in the Indian market.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially in purification. Purification is a challenge. Water quality, as you know, is a challenge in India. And the challenge is both in rural environments as well as in cities. Our role is, I see our Pentair's role as twofold. One is to increase the overall awareness for the need to address water quality appropriately. But also equally important is to bring the best technology. And when I say best technology, it doesn't have to be the most expensive, but it's technology which is appropriate for treating the quality of the water. So both in rural and as well as in industrial markets, we're working with consumers on this.
I mean, how much of your time or how much of the business, or what percentage of the business is spent in rural markets as opposed to industrial?
It's still relatively small, but we address the rural markets in two ways. One, we supply community water systems to a variety of NGOs, for-profit organizations, governments. We supply community water treatment, which is kind of in the center of a village, a water treatment system. And the second is CSR work we do with villages. So whether it's schools in villages or just supplying water treatment to villages, we do a fair bit of work with them.
Okay, and is that something you're also thinking of doing more of in time to come?
Absolutely, and we're constantly looking. Water is it's such a relevant topic, especially in India. We're constantly doing work. We're looking for opportunities to sponsor a water treatment plant or a wastewater treatment plant in a village on a CSR basis. Any natural disaster like Uttarakhand, which just happened, we supplied water treatment equipment there to help just get access to pure water, because especially when the infrastructure breaks down, it can be a very big deal not having pure water.
Of course. In your expert opinion, what do you feel, especially when it comes to the rural front or in terms of development on that front, what do you think is really required, both from the government's point of view, in terms of pure infrastructure, to eventually allow water to be more openly available to everybody?
Yes.
It's a complicated question, I know.
It's a complicated question. But there are several aspects, and I'm a big believer that one of the strengths of India is our entrepreneurial ability. And I'd almost say this needs to work on a local entrepreneur model. So one of the models we have tried, even in our CSR work, is to say, we'll supply the equipment, Pentair will supply the technology to treat the water. We'll test the water and then we'll treat the water. But someone needs to own and operate it. If it's given completely pro bono, we find that the plant or the treatment equipment is not taken care of. So we typically try and find a local entrepreneur who has a vested interest in actually making sure that the plant works, the water treatment plant works. And what Pentair will do is supply the equipment, train this person, empower this person to actually sell the water to the villagers at a nominal fee, just so that it's enough to earn a living for this entrepreneur as well as. So I think a decentralized model like this is something which is needed. That isn't to say the government shouldn't do its bit. The government needs to obviously have pipelines. It needs to map out water map out water quality in several of these villages. But that's, I would say, if they have to address the city problems, they have to address the rural problems, so the problem is pretty large for them, and they are doing it in bits and pieces.
And have you been working with government agencies as well, or as NGOs and so forth, to implement some of these measures? Yeah,
with NGOs, definitely. With government, I'm mostly doing it through CII. We, as a body, as a water community, we work with government. We do awareness sessions with them, building sessions with the government, in local municipalities, industries in the region, and in villages.
So another area that Pentair does a lot of work in is in defense. So give us a sense of what you do there.
Yeah, actually there are 3 separate business units which work with defense. The first is the filtration business unit, which is water. And there what we do is we provide water filtering and softening equipment for some of the remote outposts as well as the cantonments in cities. So like Assam, where the army Jawans might be going out and on a camp or on an exercise, a military exercise, access to pure water is important to them. So we supply some equipment for water filtration for army. Some of the electronic equipment which is used in radars or by the Air Force in their control towers needs to be very robust because it protects sophisticated electronics, and it needs to survive both natural elements as well as man-made disasters, a fire or a bombing or anything. And we build cabinets to enclose this equipment, and these have to be shock-proof, they have to be seismic-proof, they have to be very robust, and we supply especially the Air Force with this equipment. And the last area is on in Navy. Many valves used in ships and submarines, for example, the P-28 ship of the Indian Navy uses some of our valves which are shock-proof, vibration-proof, and less noisy. So a gamut of offerings to all of the armed forces, whether it's the Navy, the Air Force, or the Army.
Okay. So do you manufacture a lot here as well in terms of how does it stack up in terms of proportion? Do you import a lot of some these products, or do you also manufacture at some of your units here?
I think it's changed quite a bit. As I was telling you, if you look at our history, we were set up as an offshore manufacturing unit to export from here.
Right.
As we started getting into the Indian market, we started importing a lot. And that has shifted from roughly 70% was imported. Today, only 30% is imported. 70% is made locally. Okay. We have 4 manufacturing plants in India, in Goa, Chennai, Baroda, and Bangalore. And they manufacture various kinds of equipment for the Indian market. And
this, of course, is to keep up with the demand, but also it must allow you to customize and give tailor-made solutions for clients, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it is to keep up with demand. Yeah. It's to make sure that it's at the right price. Locally manufacturing certain products enables us to deliver it at the right price for the Indian market. But more important, as you rightly said, is engineering the product for the Indian market. Again, using the rural water example, I would say that was one of our really good exercises in developing a product which was low cost because it's rural markets and they can't afford something very high cost. Even an NGO cannot. So it needs to be low cost. It needs to handle different kinds of water quality because every borewell they dig or river water they use, the water quality could be very different. Also, it needs to consume less electricity because many of these villages just have 4 hours of electricity. So our design team worked on developing some equipment for these villages. And whether it was government sponsored or it was an NGO, we worked with them to deliver this. And I'm glad to say that there are almost 500 villages in India where Pentair is supplied to in Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan. Several areas where we supplied these plants, and they're working really well.
And are they sustainable solutions?
As I said, we try and make these sustainable from both a green perspective, so they're less energy consuming. They consume also they're water efficient. Also, using the local entrepreneur model, we try and make sure that they last.
Because you need that reception or that appreciation from the locals as well in order to make this work.
Yeah, and I think, you were asking earlier about the business models in India, and I think what makes India unique is you need that right business model, the local entrepreneur model. Rural is a great example. Our team of engineers designing equipment which is customized to the Indian environment, and then having the right selection of partners to actually implement something like this.
So are you looking at investing more in the Indian market as well at this point?
Absolutely. I think we're very committed. Pentair is very committed to India. I personally am very passionate about the growth potential in India. While there might be a temporary dip in investment, FDI into India, I don't think companies who are already vested in India are looking to leave. They're looking to stay the course. And we'll continue to invest in pockets. And when the time is right, we'll make big step changes like a new factory or something.
Okay. How long have you been with Pentair?
So I've been with Pentair for 8 years. Started in Minneapolis at the headquarters while I was in strategic marketing. and in India for 5 years.
So you grew up here or you grew up there?
I grew up here.
So you've actually been brought back to India with Pentair?
And gladly so, yes.
Okay, all right. So talking about FDI, which you just mentioned as well, the government has opened up FDI, the oil and gas sector specifically. So does that pose a business opportunity? Is that something Pentair would be open to in the future?
Absolutely. We're already doing work in oil and gas. Right. And as more FDI comes in, it'll create more opportunities. I think government has done two very good things. One is increase gas prices, and the second is allowed the FDI limit, increase the FDI limit in oil and gas. Both this should draw more investment into exploration, and once exploration happens and more oil and gas is available, it'll increase investment in pipelines, LNG plants, and downstream of that, even petrochemical plants. And all those areas, Pentair has a role to play. So.
In terms of wastewater as well, wastewater recycling, is that something that India is able to match up to right now in terms of making sure it's done properly? Because it is the need of the hour in a water deficient country like ours.
Absolutely. It is really important, wastewater recycling. You might know this fact, but 70% of the water which comes into a home is actually going down the drain. So if you recycle that, even a portion of that, you can reduce your water consumption by 50, 60%. So yes, water recycling is very important, and this problem needs to be tackled in two ways. One, at a municipal level, so government needs to set up mega recycling plants, which is more cost effective, plus you can get international organizations like the IFC funding things or World Bank funding. But also at the decentralized level. What Pentair is doing is helping governments or municipalities by supplying the right technology on the municipal front. But even on the decentralized, I think that's an area where the country hasn't done enough. So in a small locality, in a building, we could be recycling and using that water in homes, in the toilets, for example, not for drinking, but for toilets, in gardening, for cooling towers, for air conditioners. If not, a lot of the waste water from industries could be used after treatment, even in agriculture. So there's lots of opportunity, and I think we're just scratching the surface on this.
All right, Mukund, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Great to chat with you and find out the latest here at Pentair. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.